Everyone, it's Lynnea for Kindred Stamps, and today I'm going to be using the Once Upon a Nap stamp set from their May release. This stamp set is a large 4x8 stamp set, and it has my favorite villain, so of course I'm going to make a card featuring her. I have the Dragon Scales stencil from the previous release, and I am putting that face down into a box and spraying it really well with some pixie spray from Thermal Web. I am going to give this stencil a workout today, so I made sure to really spray the back of that stencil. And one of the reasons I use pixie spray was because I'm going to be doing, I think it's 3 different techniques with this stencil, and I wanted it to stay in place. So since there are fine lines on here, I'm making sure to press down really well, and that's going to make sure that my stencil stays in place and doesn't move through any of the techniques that I'm going to use. So let's start off with some regular distress inking. I'm going to use some Twisted Citron here, and I have a small life-changing blending brush from Picket Fence Studios. Now I'm coming around that green with some peacock feathers. And in the end, I wish that I hadn't done this kind of circular pattern, but my idea was I wanted to use green, blue, and purple. And green and purple don't really mix that well, but I knew that the blue and the purple would, so I thought that I would do kind of like these circular areas. And you're going to see in the end, when I take the stencil off and do this grand reveal, they look like flowers. So that's an idea for a card for you guys if you want to make flowers with this. It looks pretty cool, but I wanted this to be more like, you know how dragons, when they move in the light, you can see the different colors in their scales? That's what I wanted this to look like, and that was the vision in my head, and instead it looks like flowers, but I'm okay with it. I'm going to run with it. So let's move on to my second medium. I have not removed my stencil. All I did was just rub away that ink with a microfiber brush. And then I have some glitter dust, also from Thermal Web, and I put it back in my box and sprayed it really well. And check out how glittery this is. Now, I should have left it like this. I should have left well enough alone, but if you are anything like me, you gotta do one more thing. It's always one more step, one more thing. And I thought, how cool would this look with the glitter trapped underneath some clear heat embossing? So I left that stencil in place and used my third medium, some Versamark ink, over the top of that glitter. And then I heated it up and it looked cool. And again, I should have left well enough alone, but I didn't. I used the heat embossing as a resist technique, and I'm going in with some Indian Gold Nouveau paste here. And I thought that it would stick to the white parts of my background, but it really didn't. I don't know if I buffed too hard, but it kind of just turned it a muddy tan color. So in the end, I shouldn't have done the clear embossing, and I shouldn't have done the Nouveau mousse over it, but I like it. Look at how it shines in the light. You can definitely still see that glitter, and that little hint of gold, I'm going to tie that in later with some heat embossing. So now let's move on to some coloring. I'm coloring with alcohol markers, and again, I'm using primarily my Spectrum Noir Tri-Blend markers. The only markers I'm not using that are tri-blend are my Copic gray markers here, N8 and N6. And I realize that this is blurry. I'm not sure why. I think my camera was trying to pick up the end of my marker rather than my coloring. But this is how I color black. So I wanted to leave it in even though it's a tad bit blurry. I have never once used a black alcohol marker. I like to color in shades of gray. That way you get that illusion of black, but still with some shadows. So I go in with N8 as my darkest color, and then I'm just going to blend out with some N6. And you see you kind of get that depth of color, but to the eye it looks black. So for the purple areas of her little outfit here, I'm using the lavender blend, but I'm only using the dark and the medium color. I do that a lot with these tri-blend markers. Sometimes I'll blend with the dark and then to the lightest, or from the dark to the middle. And that way I only use that one tri-blend marker, but I can get like 3 different blends doing it that way. For the little scepter here, I used some gold brown on the bottom, and I used the darkest for that. And then for the actual orb on top, I used gold brown for my dark and blended it out with a yellow, and that gives me like that golden yellow color. Some red for her lips, and then I'm going to use my jade green blend. And I think this is the only time I'm actually going to use all 3 colors of one marker on this image. I'm going to start by using the dark around the edges where it should be darkest, and then I will blend out really well. I'm actually going to color around her face 2 or 3 times with the medium just to make sure that I'm blending out that dark. And then I'll do the same thing with the light, blending around 2 or 3 times. The lightest color of the coral blend is what I like to use to add some blush to my character's cheeks. And that is all. I will cut her out. And she wasn't really popping out against my background because my background has so much color to it. So I decided to die cut a vellum rectangle. It's a stitched rectangle, and a little black frame. That black frame is super, super tiny. So I'm going to show you in a couple minutes how I adhere it to make sure that it doesn't go all wonky on me. So I took the sentiment You're Fierce from the Once Upon a Nap stamp set, and I'm going to gold heat emboss it onto vellum. So my tips for heat embossing on vellum, if you saw me there, I kept my heat gun moving constantly. I heat from the front and then the back and then the front and the back, moving the whole time so that my vellum doesn't warp. So to adhere this vellum, I have backed it with some double-sided adhesive from Thermoweb, and I backed the whole thing so that I didn't have any areas. You know, if you use like liquid glue, you'll get the little glue spots or something. And the only place I had to hide my adhesive was behind that sentiment, and I thought it was going to flop around. So I decided to use double-sided adhesive on the whole piece. Now my tip for this frame is to add your main piece, so my vellum piece first, and then add the frame around it. That way you're not going to get kind of like a weird shape with that skinny little frame. I'm adding some Nuvo drops, and I'm doing it the way that I saw a tip on another YouTube channel, and I squeeze them out and then use my stylus or the end of a paintbrush to add them to my card. This is the finished card. So check out all that shimmer and shine, and now that I'm looking at that gold, I kind of like it. It adds just a little extra touch. So I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope that you will check out the Kindred Stamps May release because there are some fabulous stamp sets this month. Thank you all so much for watching. Catch you next time. Bye.